All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Fabulously Candice. We're on season 3, episode 2, and I have the most fabulous woman here with me today. This is Jennie Meadows. Hi, Jennie.
Hi, Candice. Lovely to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you, and you just look just so beautiful with your background and your jewelry and everything. So I'm so excited to talk with you today. Let me brag about you first. So Jennie is a neurodifferent individual who's been through the whole neurotypical spectrum of dating. So dating, marriage, procreation, divorce, post-divorce dating, before your self-realization of who and what you are. Yeah. And so today we're going to be talking about what it's like to be in your 50s and neurodifferent and dating.
It's a minefield.
It's a minefield. I love that. So welcome, Jennie. I absolutely love that you reached out to me because we were just saying we're both Aquarians. So we've got our amethyst birthstones. My birthday is Tuesday. Your birthday is Wednesday. So we've got some connection already. I'll be 49 and you'll be 53 or 54?
53.
Look at you go. Yeah. So let's start. Were you adult diagnosed or late diagnosed? And is it autistic? Tell me what your diagnosis was, or self-diagnosed.
Interesting. I'm in a very interesting position. So I was actually diagnosed ADHD privately back in 2021 after I had a diagnosis of dyspraxia back in 2019, because I actually studied a master's in photography, so I'm a photographer.
Wow.
And part of the kind of screening process when you go into uni, they do the kind of dyslexia screening, but it actually came up diagnosed dyspraxia. And then I had in the report, because I do that psycho-educational report that lasts about 4 hours, you do all the tests. It came up that I was showing strong symptoms of both ADHD and autism, but the assessor could not actually diagnose me because she wasn't qualified to diagnose.
Wow.
So I was like, but that's how it works in the UK. I don't know how it works in America or elsewhere. But you have to be qualified in order to make the diagnosis. And, you know, the autism diagnosis, you have to have like 2 psychiatrists, I believe. And then I should know, because I've actually, today, I've just learned I passed my level 2 understanding autism course.
Wow,
well.
congratulations.
So, thank you. Right, so I know I'm going off in a tangent. So it came up in that report, but I kind of held out. And I was getting quite a lot of support because in England, there's a thing called the Disabled Student Allowance.
Okay.
So if you have certain, difficulties with studying, so you get a support tutor, you get a specialist counsellor, all this sort of stuff. And I kind of held out till 2021. And then I was doing it part-time, so I had like 3 modules coming in together, and I just thought, I need help. Go for the ADHD diagnosis, got the diagnosis, was prescribed Elvant, which I didn't agree with. I had a really bad time on it. And in fact, there's a lovely, I take it you're familiar with Leanne Maskell?
No, same word.
Okay. So she had a very similar experience. I need to talk about her later on.
Say her name again. Maybe I am.
Leanne Maskell, the one that's done the A to Z of ADHD.
Yes, her. Yes. Okay. Yes, from LinkedIn. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And
then and I read her experience of being privately diagnosed, given lots of drugs. I mean, I lost. I didn't put on weight because I was with somebody, but I actually lost 15 kilos.
Wow.
Because of the reaction to the medication. And then I kind of totally spun out. Luckily, I then got together with my adult ADHD support group called Fast Minds, and they helped me with the right to choose option. So I thought, I need to get this sorted. Because going privately as well, I ran out of funds to actually continue the titration. So I've waited from October 21 to 24th of August was the first one through the NHS. went through that process, and unfortunately then the diagnosis was I wasn't affected enough by ADHD. But
Wow.
this is okay, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm having to make a formal complaint, because the actual
Oh my goodness.
the assessor, let's just say that she should not be doing that particular role, because
Mm,
a fellow member of my group, Pat, had a very similar experience with this individual. So actually, yeah, that's by the by. So now I'm kind of stuck
wow.
with the ADHD, but without the help.
Yeah.
And it's really bad at the moment in the UK in that
Yeah.
respect.
Jennie,
So
what a
that's
process.
mhm.
What
But
a
I did actually go.
process.
It's and then in 2015, no, I discovered autism and Asperger's back in 2011. So
Mm,
the work of, is it Rudy Simone?
mm,
She was very much prevalent around about 2011 and sort of wrote a lot about Asperger's. She wasn't actually like a diagnostician, but she wrote a lot about
yeah, she knew a lot,
um,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had a bit of a breakdown in 2014, which I actually realise now is due to the undiagnosed ADHD, autism plus menopause.
Yeah, which no one talks about, by the way. No one talks about the
Exactly.
effects of menopause.
And especially if you are ADHD, because it's very much controlled by hormones as well. So I went through the autistic diagnostic process in 2015, and I wasn't
Wow.
deemed then affected enough by
Wow.
autism, because then I wasn't aware of ADHD.
Not,
And as you know, if you
wow.
have both, how they
Yeah.
can
Uh-huh.
almost cancel each other out.
They do. They just contradict each other. It's just,
And then it's like, and they can actually work together if you get the
yes.
right and you've got the right support, but then they
Yes.
fight together as well.
Well, and let's add in the piece of being female. I really believe that those of us that identify as female, especially we learned to mask, right? And so
Yeah.
it is harder. And that's why we have so many. I really think we're seeing a lot more self-diagnosis because of what you're describing, where these assessors aren't qualified. They're not aware of what it looks like. It doesn't look a certain way, first and foremost. And our traits are very different by the time we become adults, because we've been masking. And so I just think I have so much compassion for you for what you've gone through, because this is the story of so many adults that I hear from. It's just this long process. And then how you said, you're told by someone else that you're not affected enough, which is so offensive.
It's like, I just want to grab them by the neck and go,
Yes.
okay, you have no idea.
No idea.
I mean,
Yeah.
also the other issue is, if you look a certain way,
Yes.
as you know, you're blonde haired, you're blue
Yes.
eyed.
Yes.
It's like you kind of go under the radar.
Yes.
But then there's that now the amount of jobs that I've got, because I've got to certain ways. I used to work in PR and marketing.
Yep.
So I'd present really well in an interview.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like dating.
Yes, which I'm excited to talk about. You are,
then,
yeah.
It's kind of, and then your kind of little quirks come out, and they're kind of like, ooh, don't like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not the person they interviewed when, and it's almost like dating as well, when the guy's like kind of chatting you up in the bar, and it's like, one of the other things I find, I'm really, really bad at understanding the subtle, the flirting.
Yeah.
And I remember like quite a few times I actually had to ask the person, it's like, have I pulled?
Well, let's talk about that, because you're onto something here, and it's a beautiful segue into dating. The work environment, again, we do mask quite well. I work for myself for a reason. And when I finally came out, now it's 5 years, after diagnosis where I came out to my staff because I was really struggling with my staff in terms of emotional dysregulation, and I was having meltdowns and really just struggling with overwhelm and not, anyway. So when I was able to get the diagnosis and then talk to my staff, there was a lot of compassion. And then I surrounded myself with people that are very trustworthy, but also that saw my strengths, but also saw my soft spots and said, okay, I'll step in where you have soft spots to kind of help you and make those accommodations, which I appreciate. One being my husband, thank goodness. But when we were dating, it was similar. So, we're very attracted to each other, and first date, couple glasses of wine, things are going well. As an autistic female, I love to take a deep dive into conversation. I'm not about superficial. Yeah. And he actually really liked that. He was really attracted to that because he hadn't been with other women. That I also was very loyal. It's just like all the things, right? My autism shining through. But then as we started dating and got more serious, I would have more meltdowns because of the environment. And then it was like, what's happening? Who's this person? And so I'm curious about that. Let's talk about that in terms of post-divorce, getting back in the dating scene. How old were you when you got divorced, if that's okay that I ask?
No, that's fine. No, I married my husband. No, we got together in 2000. We married in 2003, had my daughter 2005, separated 2014, and then finally divorced 2017.
Okay.
So post-split, it was kind of difficult, or not difficult. So, I met a few guys like socially. And then what was I had a big period where I just didn't date anybody.
Like took a break.
It was in early 2015. That's when I had I lost another job, and also I had a health scare. But, and so I was dealing with that thing. So I found a lump in my breast in December 2014, and this was just before Christmas.
Wow.
And then I had, if you're familiar with EastEnders, it's a real doof, doof, doof moment. So I had my scan on the morning of Christmas Eve.
Wow.
And they weren't able to check it properly because I didn't have the staff at that time. So I had to wait through Christmas. Luckily, it was just a cyst, so that was okay. But it was just that time thinking, God, I'm a single mum.
Yeah.
And then I found out I'd lost my job because I didn't make the probation period. Beginning of 2015, everything just went flat.
Yeah.
But then actually, I kind of got back and on my feet and realised that actually this is probably happening for a good reason. But then I took the best bit was like 3 months of clearing the garden.
Yeah. Great way to look at it.
Exactly. But then actually, interestingly, I reconnected with an individual that I went to uni with back in between 96 and 99, which was an interesting thing. But it was one of those. So there's an individual that we just got each other, but for various reasons it didn't work out, etc. But then I kind of dipped my toe into like the online dating, and was
that a whole other world?
That was because then I kind of realized how many kind of sharks there were out there, and you have to be, and as you know, being neurodiverse, and then you can have abandonment issues and feeling of affection and the dopamine and all this, and those apps are designed for, they're like ADHD feeders, as it were, with the dopamine hits.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I kind of went on a few dates, but nothing really stuck. And then 2017, there's a few, but it just generally, it's like, you chat to someone, you kind of filter out the ones who send the inappropriate images.
Yeah.
And But then actually what was quite interesting, I then met my long-term ex, but it was actually through work, because I was working for this agency that did holiday let photography, and we were looking for photographers. So his details came up, and I thought, oh, you know, you could be a potential photographer for this agency. And so we got chatting. And then what was quite interesting, my cycling club arranged a London to Brighton bike ride.
That's fun.
And then, you know, had a really good fun day. Top of Ditchling Beacon, you know, took a photo, put it on Instagram, and then he's like, oh, you're in Brighton. I'm like, I live in Brighton, so let's meet for a drink. So we met. It was like me in bike gear, all sweaty.
The perfect dating gear.
Well, I'll tell you how I met my ex-husband anyway.
Yeah.
And then we sort of met, we chatted, and it was that kind of bam, you know, when you like start talking to someone, and
Yes.
because he's Italian, I would call him a bit of a Marconi, if that makes sense. And it definitely on the spectrum, and definitely ADHD. It's like when he was talking, he said, oh, you know, I'm not bipolar, I'm pentapolar, because I've got all these like voices in my head and stuff.
So he's also neurodifferent, right? Is that what you're saying? So there was a connection.
Yeah.
So let's pause, because you've said so many things that I really want to hone in on.
Yeah.
For those of us that are females, first of all, we know that, like you said, loss of employment is something that happens for a lot of autistic individuals. Then a lot of people don't talk about parenting or just the challenges of parenting as an autistic, ADHD single parent. Menopause, again, is not only are our periods, or what I call our moons, I take kind of more of a just really honoring of our periods. So I call it our moons, and as do indigenous cultures. But that and menopause are really seen as just hush hush in society. And especially for those of us that are neurodivergent, no one's talking about that. And then the challenges of being older and dating for anyone, as well as being neurodivergent. And so I also want to say that when you talked about sharks and having to be really careful online, it is really challenging. Now, I was not I lasted, I think, a day on online dating. And I, similar to you, met Chris, my partner, at work at the time. And so that's a whole kind of a funny story. But one of the things we know with women in particular that are autistic, we do struggle with reading the intentions of others. We know that with autistic individuals in general. And so we are vulnerable, period. We're vulnerable. Being autistic we are vulnerable, and vulnerable to getting in relationships where we can be taken advantage of. We often are. There can be a lot of trauma involved in that. So dating is challenging. And then the trauma of divorce, again, like all the things. So for you, finding someone who also has a similar brain must have been just like a relief.
Well, kind of, but then it didn't work out, unfortunately. And we split up at the time when I was going through getting the diagnosis, because I actually realized that I could not deal with an undiagnosed, unaware individual.
Okay.
And
So he wasn't diagnosed.
Well, he wasn't diagnosed,
but
he
got it.
was exhibiting traits. And this is the real difficulties, like an individual, and myself included, if they're not self-aware of their neurodiversity, and then they just do things blindly.
Yeah.
So, for example, a really good example of this was my 50th birthday. And I thought, right, it was a Saturday. Go down to Brighton. Thought, yeah, I'll be spoiled. So nice prosecco, cook some nice food, and he was working. And he didn't actually come back that night because he was so hyper focused at work, because he's a
wow.
He he's like a electrical engineer, sound engineer person. He like kind of makes the motion capture glove. So, but he actually
Wow.
stayed all night, and there was me on my 50th birthday there with my prosecco, my nice food. And I'm like, okay. So my rule is, if there is that attraction with a neurodiverse individual, if they're not aware of it, I will stay away, because it's almost like dealing with an electric cable, because you don't know when it's going to hit you.
Yeah.
Because they're not self-aware.
Yeah. So that is really, can you guys hear me really quick? Tatum, my speaker keeps kind of going in and out. So can you hear me okay? You can hear me? Okay. Yeah, it's weird. Sometimes I can hear you and sometimes I can't. Okay, great. She just messaged. So I'll pause and then we'll start again.
But also
Okay.
there's a lot of time, because he was kind of set in his ways, of trying to get him to come to London, and I was always going to Brighton. I mean, I did my MA at Brighton, so I could stay there. So I was like living half and half, which again is quite complicated anyway. But I realised that I was putting more into it than I was actually receiving.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, actually, my energy is being wasted here.
Well, I do think that as we get older, okay, we just start knowing what we want, right? It's like, and so I think that's really important. It was your 50th birthday, right? And so here it's your 50th birthday, and he is not showing up for you because, like you said, he was unaware. And I don't feel like we're being unkind by saying that, but I do think it is important, no matter what your diagnosis is or what's going on, to have that awareness of, okay, this is what's going on with my brain, and some acknowledgement of that and the impact. And that's, because it's your 50th birthday and you spent it alone, which is
and also
sad.
not to be no phone call, no text.
Wow.
No contact.
Yeah.
Until, I was stuck at work. And also he didn't come back till the afternoon because Brighton Half Marathon was on, so he couldn't get the bus through town, apparently. So but then
what would you say let's just offer this. What is your advice for individuals who aren't diagnosed? Any advice in terms of what to do differently if someone's listening to you? Because there will be people that are listening that are like, hey, I'm in the dating scene, and I wonder if I'm autistic, or I wonder if I'm ADHD. I haven't been formally diagnosed. Based on that experience, Jennie, what advice would you give to men that might have the propensity to do what this gentleman did?
well, things, if they're not aware, you can't do anything, because you can't change their nature, because it's how they behave. So I would, but if they are aware and they are kind of self-identifying or self-diagnosed, then you would behave as if you are diagnosed, as it were, because then if you're aware of your behavior and how it impacts on others, and you have empathy with others, then you can kind of manage it. But when they're not aware and they just go crashing through your life without any consideration, individuals like that, I would advise, walk away.
Okay, so you're saying it for the person that's having the experience with someone who's unaware. And so what if you're with someone, here's my thought. Did you say anything to him?
I tried to, but I wasn't. I was going through a very, very bad time. Unfortunately, I had a really bad reaction to the L-Vance. So and one of the things we subscribe to through Fast Minds is it's a bit like being on an airplane. You have to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you can help anybody else.
I agree.
And this is also what I would advise, actually, is once you're kind of aware of your neurodiversity and what your challenges are, is you have to work on yourself before you go anywhere near any other individual, because you'll end up attracting the wrong potential partner. And as I was saying to Tatum earlier as well, once you're diagnosed, and when you're that bit after that first year, you are so vulnerable as an individual because you're kind of reframing everything.
Yeah.
And and actually you're reframing yourself. And I think until you go through that process and realize actually what your boundaries are as well, this is so important, the boundaries. Once you get those boundaries in place and actually know, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, just stay away. So I've not actually, no, I did go through a little Tinder experiment back in October, November, but then I realized that I had an evening where I was just like swiping whatever, and I felt so good. And I tell you why I felt really good, because I was just full of blooming dopamine.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I went, this is not good. I did go I went on a couple of dates with individuals, and I just thought, no, this is not right. But then what I did, we had that the Disabled Awareness Day. And what I did, I transferred my focus from Tinder to LinkedIn. So I was getting the same hits from LinkedIn.
Yep.
And it was like, and then I connected with yourself, with Leanne, and all these individuals. So I was actually focusing the energy elsewhere.
Good. Okay, let's talk about this, because this is huge, Jennie. So what you're saying is really important. And I do want to say there might be individuals who say, I actually really like the person. I'm just so hurt that they didn't show up for me in this way. So one piece of advice that you said, if someone's unaware, you need to walk away. And I want to offer, just as a therapist, for those folks that are listening that say, I actually really care about the person, I want to give them a chance. That's where I would say you need to give them feedback. It needs to be honest feedback about, this is what happened. This is what you did. This is what hurt me. And this is what I want and need in a relationship, for those that choose to stay in that with someone who perhaps isn't aware and hasn't been diagnosed. The second thing I want to say that is really important, just some tips for folks that are listening that you're saying, Jennie. When you've been diagnosed, you are really in that phase of learning about yourself. It can be very overwhelming. So take time, get support, whether it's a support group, therapist. You've got, like we've seen on LinkedIn, such a big community of neurodiverse folks where you're surrounded in information, support, kindness, and compassion, so that you can figure out, especially if you're in between in the dating scene, before you start dating, perhaps, what do I want? And what don't I want?
It's like, who am I?
Who am I? What do I want? What do I don't want? And then I also love that awareness for you of, okay, I have this pleasure-seeking brain because I have low levels of dopamine. So instead of doing this big, just mindless swiping left or right on a online app, I'm going to actually go to LinkedIn and maybe be more productive in my connecting, right? Like maybe be more intentional about who I'm connecting with, where it's like there's people that aren't sharks, or I don't have to sit and worry about. I mean, sometimes on LinkedIn, as we all have gotten, the person that sent like an inappropriate message, whatever, but it's very different than a dating app. So great advice. I don't know if you're aware that you're actually giving advice to people who are, no matter what age, going into the dating scene. Now, I also want to say that I do think post-divorce, it is important to give yourself time before you start dating for many reasons. There's a lot of grief. I think when we're not ready as humans, we can literally go back into the same relationship and attract the same person that we just got out of a relationship with if we haven't done our own work, right?
Correct. Yeah. You have to work on yourself, that self-healing, coming to terms with what went wrong, but also recognizing what actually did work, because there was a reason why you got together in the first place.
Yeah, I love that. I always tell couples that you're here together in front of me for a reason. So clearly there's love. Clearly there's something here that keeps you together. Let's start there with what attracted you to that person, right? Learning from that. And then also I think just on our end, looking at what could I have done differently too, so that when I go into a new relationship, I also am aware of what do I need? Because I know that for me, I need a lot of my own self-care and tools in place so that I'm not melting down at Chris, so that he has space also to breathe and be. And so that's really important. But I want to switch gears, just so aware of the time, and it goes so fast. I want to talk about sex. So, as we get older, sometimes we have to get more creative. Sometimes we can experience more dryness, truly, vaginally. But I also think the beauty as we get older is I'm really clear on what I like and what I don't like sexually.
And also the other thing is the sensory issues.
Yes.
Because that was one of the things that totally destroyed my marriage, because it's also it's like the way that somebody touches you as well.
Yeah.
So for example, as well, I've actually got fibromyalgia, and I've been diagnosed with hypermobility spectrum disorder as well.
Yeah, very common.
And that's another thing I'd love to talk about, because this is something massive. But I have to be touched in a certain way, and my ex-husband, unfortunately, he either touched me too light or too heavy, and it's like, no. And then I think the worst was because I used to row and do triathlon as well. So I've done a full Ironman, by the way.
Wow, that's amazing. Go you.
Yeah, I did endurance sports for 30 years.
That's amazing.
And my ex-husband, he was actually a lightweight Olympic rower, so he rowed at Athens.
Wow.
And then when he retired, he took up triathlon. And then one of the things he did, he started shaving his legs because of the swimming and stuff.
Yeah.
But then when he got the regrowth, it was like cuddling up to a hedgehog.
Yes.
And then it was actually painful. But then it's like, no, I don't want to hug you because it's caused me pain. And then of course he would have rejection, was it
sensitivity? Yeah.
Sensitivity. And it was like, but also there was like issues with hygiene. I'm not going to go into details, but it's like, no, I don't want you anywhere near me because I don't like your smell. And I'm really smell, touch, light, etc.
Yeah. So I love that you're bringing that up, because this is, Jennie, this is huge. Sensory issues. I wrote an ebook called Our Sexual Sensory Profile, because again, our sexual sensory profile impacts us in the bedroom. Smells, touch, lube.
Yeah. But also the other thing is I've got synesthesia.
Okay.
So I actually visualize the physical sensations.
Wow. Say more about that for folks that may not know about that.
Synesthesia is experiencing one sense for another. So for example, I experience taste as musical notes.
That's amazing.
And then with so because I can visualize the sensations. So for example, if I have an injection, I can't watch the needle, because then if I see it, I kind of visualize it. It's like replaying a video, and then I experience the pain as well.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like the other thing, God, it's the looking into somebody's eyes when you're getting intimate. I can't.
Yeah.
It's really, I find it really whatever. But also, if I close my eyes, I can visualize it, so I don't actually need to open my eyes.
Well, and you're saying such wonderful things. Just again, tips. Again, so for folks, you can go on our website, namasteadvice.com, to our neuro-inclusive page. I have my sexual sensory profile ebook, and I have our ebook there. And then on CandiceChristiansen.com, I have our ebook, my ebook. I'm saying I have a center. So my ebook there. What you're saying though is so important, because if you're willing and open as a couple to talk about, I like this type of touch, I don't, what's yummy, what's yucky, I like this touch, taste, sound, smell, the temperature. I
Oh,
like this pressure or not.
yeah, yeah.
I like this type of sheets. I like the
Mhm.
lighting to be this way. If you both can agree and support each other, you can have a really beautiful, incredible, sensual, sexual experience.
Mhm. Yeah, because I'm more, I know that I'm more sensual. And people like, for me, it's like, S&M is just completely, it's like, why would you want to hurt? Because it's like, for me, I'm very sensual. So I'm very cat-like, if
Yeah,
that
I
makes sense.
love
And
that.
that's
Yeah.
and it's like all my textures, I wear like satins,
Yes.
silk scarf,
Yes.
and it has to feel right because,
Same here.
I visualize the thing, but yeah,
I
yeah,
love it. I love
yeah.
that. And so advice for folks again is to, when you're in a relationship or you're exploring sex, especially as neurodifferent folks, we need to be able to have a conversation about sight, sound, smell, sensations, touch,
Mhm.
temperature, taste. What do we like? What do we not like with ourselves and with our partner, so that sex can be the most enjoyable thing. One of the things, I've had quite an incredible healing journey over the last almost 3 months now. And as I connect more to my own energy, one of the things when we talk about sex is very misunderstood globally, and it's very
Mhm.
pornified in our culture, just the human culture. The
Yeah,
human race has
I agree.
pornified sex. But if we look at it as sex being the acronym of a sacred energy exchange,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
it is really profound.
And
And
also, it's
that,
all, sorry.
well, and I want to say that more
Mhm.
than anything, when we're looking at our sensory profile, is crucial to having a sacred energy exchange with someone. And are
Mhm.
they in the right mindset? And are they in the right energy? Are we? And is the setting right for us to have that, to make it what it deserves to be, instead of just fucking, excuse my language, but
Yeah,
truly,
that's fine.
instead of
Yeah,
just
no.
fucking.
Yeah, the physical act, and also the other thing is the other issue being, on the autistic spectrum, and it doesn't just affect neurodiverse individuals, is alexithymia.
Yeah.
And I remember my ex-husband like saying, "Well, what is it that you want?" And I was just literally,
Yeah.
I just could not get the words out. And the thing is, if you can't communicate, but then I know that the individuals where I've made, I would say there's two individuals in my life who just get me mentally, physically. And I didn't have to communicate because it was there. But also the other thing is they also smelt a particular way as well.
Yeah.
And that's so important.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing you don't have when you're doing like the Tinder or the dating sites. You don't
Yeah.
get,
Yes.
and the physical, the chemical, the energy as well from somebody.
Yes. That's true. That's
And that is
lost.
so
That's
key.
lost with all of this online like dating and social media. So that's why I also, one of the reasons why I created an ebook, so that you visually could go through it together. It's the shortest little book, but as a couple, so, and we're doing, my partner and I are doing a web neurodiverse couples class right now, and we'll be showing that to folks. So it's like you have a visual aid with questions, so that you
Yeah,
don't have to say, "Ugh," if you're
yeah.
not sure, but you could point like, oh,
Mhm.
that, I do in this description, I like that. And then even like seeing things, whether you see it on a magazine or online. I mean, there's so much visual stuff online that as a couple, if you feel safe enough to say, gosh, in this article, it talks about this, or I see this image, this is what I like, or wow, I like this texture right here, this silky, soft texture.
Yeah.
But you have to feel safe. All of
Mhm.
us, even if we're autistic, ADHD, we have to feel safe to connect with someone at that
Oh,
level.
yeah.
Truly. Now, I
Mhm.
get that we've got lower levels of dopamine that can impact our neurotransmitter or desire to seek pleasure, which can lead us down a path sometimes, like you found yourself just aimlessly like Tinder.
Mhm.
Wow. So I get that. I also get that if we can channel that to in a way that we can say, this is what feels good.
Mhm.
I really like this. This is what smells good to me. You can have a really beautiful sexual experience no matter what age. And as we get older, there is more dryness. Maybe we've got more aches and pains. So positioning, we have to get creative with it. using humor. I mean, if you feel safe though with your partner, it can be really beautiful. So Jennie, this
Well,
has been an awesome conversation. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. No, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say the other thing is it's like hyper awareness as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you know, if you hear a little sound, you know, when I had my daughter with me, it was like the mummy radar.
Yeah. Oh.
And it's like pops you out. It's like, oh, and then you suddenly tense up and it's just like,
Uh-huh.
ugh.
Yeah. So that's another thing that you have to get really creative when there's children, no matter how old the children are, because if your child's 31, we have family coming into town this weekend, and one of our daughters, stepdaughter to me, but I say my daughters because that's how it feels. I just love them, is in their 30s. She's in her 30s. And so, yeah, you have to get creative and, or you wait, right? But if they're living with you, that can be really challenging. It's like couples have to get really creative. So again, I think, but I do want to say that for those of us that have neurologically different brains, a lot of us do like sex, a lot of us want sex, but it has to be in the right setting and it has to be the right sensory experience. And that really is key. And also key is we absolutely have to feel emotionally and physically safe with a person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sexually safe. Sexually
Definitely.
safe.
And also the fact, you know, that it's intimacy and sensuality, and also I love hugs, but it has to be the right person.
Yes.
And it's like, so for example, like with my bed, I've got a duvet, a fleece blanket, a weighted blanket, and a fake fur.
That
I'll
sounds
show you my boudoir
amazing.
after.
That sounds amazing.
Because I need that kind of hug, but even in
Same
the summer,
here.
I will have that because I need that
Yeah.
that pressure.
Yeah, me too.
And it's like, yeah.
Well, and some folks need pressured sex too. And so there's also a fine line there. You have to feel really safe, to have that again, but there's choice in it. I think sex can be really beautiful. One of the reasons why I was inspired to do this podcast is I wanted to dispel all the myths around autistic people not wanting sex or liking sex. We enjoy it. We love it. We like it. Now, not every autistic person does. So I don't want to overgeneralize, but I can speak for myself. I love and enjoy sex with the right sensory experience, the right person where I feel safe, sexually, emotionally, physically, in a setting where I feel like I can let go and I'm heard and can be understood, seen, and known, and have someone that's very loving and kind. And I do think that I want more people to be able to talk about this, because those of us with neurologically different brains, it's not black and white. There's this assumption that we're asexual or we're against being sexual. And that's not true, especially as we get older. As older women, we're very sensual. We want to be sexual. No, not everyone. I want to honor that. But you and I are. It just has to be in the right setting and with the right person. So, Jennie, thank you so much for coming on today. This was delightful.
No, I absolutely loved it. I would love to speak to you again because there's so much more.
There is always. Always.
But I think also regarding the menopause and neurodivergent women, because this is a really big thing, especially in Britain at the moment. And in fact, on Monday at 4:30 GMT, Parliament is going to actually have a debate.
Wow.
Regarding autism and ADHD and the lack of diagnosis on what the problems are. And there's been a petition. So that's going to be absolutely fascinating because I call it the lost generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so many wonderful individuals out there with the right help, the right support, the right management of the conditions, etc. will be flying. And we've got so much to contribute because of the way that we think, the way to feel, and but we're making a difference, and we are making changes, through this community, through LinkedIn. It's absolutely brilliant.
We have a large community. We do have a large community, which we need so that our voices are heard, right? So that we can advocate for ourselves, because all too often the well-meaning psychiatrists, doctors, psychologists neuropsychologists who are doing the diagnosing are actually misdiagnosing. Too often we're diagnosed as borderline, dependent personality disorder, not given a proper diagnosis.
Yeah, I did go through that because I went through what they call the multidisciplinary team process, where your GP, like, they press literally the red buttons. You get social workers, the OTs, everything. And then I was referred to from primary mental health to secondary mental health. And then, unfortunately, when you go that route, they have only got 3 diagnoses available, which is schizophrenia, bipolar, and borderline personality. This is how it is in Britain.
Yeah,
so
that's ridiculous.
And after 45 minutes, a CPN said, "Oh, you're bipolar. I want to prescribe antipsychotics." And I just went, "Actually, no, I'm not." But a lot of individuals have spent between 2 and 5 years
Oh my
on
gosh.
lithium because they've been diagnosed as that, and they've
been misdiagnosed. Yep.
And also, the reason being is because emotional dysregulation has been taken out of DSM-5, where before the DSM-4 included emotional dysregulation. But anything emotional dysregulation is schizophrenia, borderline personality.
I did not realize that. So because ADHD,
that.
a big trait of ADHD is emotional dysregulation. So that whoever's created, whoever's on the panel that creates the diagnostic manual for clinicians, it just needs to be an overhaul needs to be done, and neurological conditions, I don't think should actually be in there. I think there should be a separate manual for neurological conditions that's researched by people who actually have these neurological differences, instead of people just guessing or making a decision. The DSM is very political. A lot of people look at it as the Bible, and it's not. It's a field manual. It's a guide. But Jennie, we're out of time. My goodness, we could talk forever. It's been amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And to all of you that are here listening and watching now, because we're doing it this way as well, please be tender with yourselves. We all deserve a little more tenderness. So I just want to put that out there in the world, that love is medicine. And if we all can just come from that space, we will heal, and the world will truly just be the most amazing place. So thank you, everybody. Have a fabulous rest of your week. Until next time. Bye.